Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 328. I was white here and kicked off with e4. And my opponent played e5. I get the Italian game after the knight moves and bishop to c4. And my opponent plays knight f6, the two knights defense. So he's immediately counterattacking the e-pawn. But white has this very interesting move here, knight g5. You see, actually, the most common way to play it, maybe the most solid way to play, is d3. But it's always fun to play this line with knight g5. So whenever I get the chance, I play this way. And, of course, the knight and the bishop are immediately attacking the f7 pawn. And also, the knight, incidentally, protects the e4 pawn. So there's different ways that black can respond. The most common way is d5, which is basically a pawn sack. White's going to take that pawn, but black gets a good play for that. And you can see that's the method the engine approves of. Knight takes e4 is an interesting tactical way to play, but doesn't quite work out. And bishop c5. This is the Traxler variation or the Wilkes-Barre variation. Just ignoring the threat to f7 and counterattacking. The threat is not immediate here, but the problem is if you take with the knight, which the engine likes, knight takes at first. That's funny. And maybe it is good. So it's hitting the queen and it's hitting the rook. Black can play bishop takes f2. And then if you take on f2, this turns into at least a draw. The engine is not figuring out what's going on yet. But if you give it time to think about it, usually it'll settle down. So if you grab the bishop, knight takes e4 check, and then the engine likes king to g1 here. We'll see how long it takes before the engine realizes that it's in trouble. Queen to h4. Threatening checkmate here on f2. So g3 is played. Knight takes. Knight takes the rook in the corner. And suddenly, look at that evaluation change. Suddenly it's 0, 0, 0. So the engine was completely wrong about this whole position. So this is an interesting thing to keep in mind, and that's why I wanted to show you that variation, is the engines don't always understand what's going on when the variation is a little bit too deep for them. So you can't take the bishop. That just is a drawing line. So you have to play king f1 here if you want to play this line at all. And once again, the engine thinks that white is doing well here, but you get into a lot of trouble, and I think if you follow these lines out, the engine will start to change its tune and give black more of a chance. So the way I played this is sort of the recommended way, is instead of taking with the knight and trying to win the rook in the corner, take with the bishop. This forces the king to move. The king can go to e7 or to f8. If it goes to e7, then you can drop the bishop back. You do need to get the bishop out of trouble. You can go to either d5 or to b3. One trick to notice is that if the king went to f8 instead, you can't play bishop to d5 because of knight takes bishop. And now when you take back the knight, the queen is going to take your knight, and black will be a piece up. So bishop to d5 can only be played if the king has gone to e7 and blocked that diagonal of the queen. So that's what happened in the game. He played king e7. I went bishop d5. And this is okay. This gives white a slight edge. So this is probably the way to play it if you're ever faced with this opening. Of course, most black players are somewhat afraid to go into these complications because black can get into trouble as easily as white in these lines. And there is a slight edge to white, but difficult to play. So my opponent played rook f8. Looks like that's the main move here. And I played d3. It looks like castling is the way to go here. So, yeah, unfortunately after bishop d5, I'm just improvising. That's as far as my understanding goes. He plays h6, kicking the knight. And I drop back to f3. Yeah, okay, so we're just out of the opening book here, and we'll just go by the engine. Although keep in mind that the engine may be not telling the whole truth here. Okay, so he plays d6, and I castle. And I was thinking, this is probably a pretty good position, but I do have to worry about this nagging pressure on the f file. If he can get an extra piece attacking the knight, which he does immediately, and if he gets this this knight out of the way with tempo, then he can, for example, exchange here, and I can't take back with the queen because his rook is on that file. So it just seems difficult for some reason in this position to take advantage of black's exposed king. And really what white needs to do is get rid of some of the material. And so what I should have played here is just bishop takes c6. And I didn't do that. I played knight bd2, defending the knight. And it's a reasonable way to play, but just taking off the c6 knight, and this bishop maybe is somewhat of a liability here. And one of the reasons you retreat to this square is so you can exchange it for a knight and stop that from jumping into d4 and putting more pressure here. I play a6 here to... Oh no, it's my opponent's move. He played a6. Yeah, knight takes d5 immediately is probably good. He played a6. I'm not sure what the point of that move was. And then I play h3, kicking. Cancel that. Kicking his bishop. And he retreats, keeping the pin. And I go g4. I decide I want to break the pin. And he plays his bishop back to f7. And now I should really trade off this bishop. I'm losing a pawn here. Or the engine has an interesting idea, c4, cementing the bishop in there solidly. So this move is a blunder. I'm counterattacking his bishop, but I'm just losing a pawn here. And now, well, he drops back first, but I still don't do anything about my bishop. I played knight to h4. So I was thinking about other things, and I left this bishop here for the taking, and he grabbed it. And I played e takes d. Oh, I played knight f5 first. Maybe I should have just taken the bishop immediately. Why is that better to take immediately? It says take e takes d5, knight takes d5, and now knight g6 check. Ah, that's the trick. You lure the knight away and take advantage of the fork here. Okay, so I should have done the exchange first here and then played knight to g4 if he takes back. Well, he has to take back. Pretty much. Okay, so here I've given the advantage back to him again. He retreats his king, gets his king out of trouble. Now I take the bishop. And he played knight e7. He could have just taken back with the pawn immediately, taken back with the knight immediately, but he plays here first. And now I suppose I could have tried c4 to hold on to the pawn, but I continued developing my pieces. And so I am going to turn the engine off at this point, but black has a slight edge, and I think he keeps it most of the way through the game. The reason I'm turning the engine off is because there's a really neat tactic, and I want to pose it as a tactical quiz when we get to that point, and I don't want the engine giving the answer away. So the game continues. I play bishop e3. He decides to take my knight on f5. This is a good choice because it leaves me, cancel that, leaves me with these this doubled pawn on the f file and a weak pawn here on f5. Yeah, I took on a7 first. He took back, and then I grabbed the knight. So yeah, I just didn't play this very well, letting him mess up my pawns. And so in the opening I was probably okay, but later on when I let him win these pawns, and then black gets the advantage. Okay, so he played knight takes d5, grabbing that pawn, and I come out with the queen. So the material is even because he had given up a pawn early on. Now he's got it back. And but even though the material is even, it looks like I have an active queen. His king is going to go to safety right now, and I'm left with these weak pawns. So black is just better. I get my king out of the way, trying to get pressure on the h file. He goes knight f4, blocking the f file, and also yeah, it's just a good outpost for his knight. Maybe he's going to get pressure here, and he always has the threat of coming into e2 and perhaps catching some pieces in a fork. So, and also there's no way I can chase this knight away, so he's sort of permanently there. I have to kind of work around him. But I have no pawns that can kick him. I could say trade him off is my only way of getting rid of him, basically. Rook g1, setting up on the g file, queen d7, defending. Knight d2, trying to get my knight over where the action is, over on the king side. Rook takes. f5. Yeah, he scoops up the pawn, so now he's a pawn ahead. Knight to e4. And rook to a8, just dropping this rook back. So right here is the tactic. So it's white's turn to move, and there's one move here that wins the game. See if you can spot it. I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds to give you a chance to pause the video. Okay, I am going to give the answer away now. If you haven't got it, I really recommend stopping the video and looking at it till you get it. It's a neat tactic. Knight here. Of course, this is a fork of the king and the queen. So you got to take the knight off, or you're just going to be down a queen. Can't take with the pawn because that's pinned. So you have to take with the rook. But the rook was also pinned. The rook here was guarding this diagonal towards his queen. So after rook takes, it's just queen takes queen. And so I win a queen for a knight, and I would go on to win the game. So very cool tactic there I missed. Knight f6 check. Something, I might have spotted that in a slow game. I was aware, actually, that there was this pin here, and I was aware of the pin here. And what I didn't notice was knight f6 there was a fork, as well as taking advantage of those two pins. So if you have the time to look for these things, you should always be looking for all of your forcing moves, and of course a check is always a forcing move, and you shouldn't throw it out immediately just because it looks like it can be taken two different ways, because both ways it can be taken have a liability. Okay, I played knight g3, kicking his rook, but his rook just drops back. And I didn't see anything better than taking the queens off at this point. But now he's just got a winning endgame with two rooks and a knight against two rooks and a knight, so even material. And but he has an extra pawn. This pawn is extra, and my pawns on the king side are weak. So overall, it's just a winning advantage. Let's just go through the moves. I try to get active with my pieces. That's what you do. But he's also done a very logical build-up on my weak f-pawn, and now he's chasing away the only defender of that pawn. He's going to crash through with his rooks, and I try to create some weaknesses around his king with this pawn push, trying to undermine his structure over here. But it's too little too late. We get into this position, and I resign at this point. But I thought that was an interesting game overall. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.